So today we're going to be talking about reflexive verbs, what they are, how to form them, and we're going to be using these in the context of family and friend relationships. Don't forget to fill in your homework sheet as you watch this video, and you can pause, rewind and rewatch as you go along. So let's get started. The first question we need to ask is, what is a reflexive verb? Now, in order to answer what a reflexive verb is, we need to go back to basics and figure out what a verb is. A verb describes an action. So, for example, to run, to sleep, to swim, to eat, those are all verbs. Now, if you think of verbs as the main trunk of the tree and the branches that come off are the different people that you're talking about within the verb. So, for example, the verb to run, the branches off of that would be I run when you're talking about yourself, you run when you're talking to someone else, he or she runs when you're talking about someone else, a boy or a girl, a man or a woman, etc. Reflexive verbs describe an action done to oneself. So, for example, the verbs that we'll be looking at are to get angry with, to get on with, to have fun with. A reflexive verb that you already know is s'appeler, which means to call oneself. Je m'appelle is part of that verb, and it means I call myself. Je meaning I, appelle meaning call, and the M apostrophe meaning myself. I call myself. Il s'appelle means he calls himself. So the il is he, calls himself. To use reflexive verbs, you need three different parts. The first part you can see here on the board. These are pronouns. We have these both in English and in French. So, for example, the first one there on the board, je, means I. You would use this if you were talking about yourself. To, you, singular, so you're talking to one person directly. Il means he. Elle means she. Nous, over on the other side, means we, so a group of people where you're involved in that group. Vous means you, if you're talking to more than one person or somebody in a formal situation. Il means they, a group of boys or a group of mixed boys and girls. And elle means they, but for a group of girls only. So there we are, that's it with the English there as well. So pronouns are part one. Part two, and this is where it gets a little bit different from normal verbs, you need a reflexive pronoun. On the board here you can see part one, je, the pronoun, which means I, and we can see part two in red, me. That's the reflexive pronoun. It can also be just an M apostrophe. Now that depends on if the verb begins with a vowel. If the verb doesn't begin with a vowel, it's M-E, me. And if it does begin with a vowel, it's M apostrophe. Here again, in blue we can see your first pronoun, tu, and then in red we've got the reflexive pronoun, te. The te can also change to T apostrophe. For the exact same reason, the me from before would change to M apostrophe. It depends on if the verb begins with a vowel. Both il and elle in blue are the pronouns, part one. Il means he, elle means she. They're both followed by the same reflexive pronoun, se, se, or S apostrophe if the verb begins with a vowel. So it'd be il se or elle se. He does the action to himself, she does the action to herself. Same here, guys. Nous in blue is part one, your pronoun, and your reflexive pronoun is really easy to remember here because again it's nous, so it's nous, nous. You need to say both of them to form a reflexive verb. Same again with vous. Remember that vous means you, plural, so you if you're talking to a group of people, or you if you're talking to somebody in a formal situation. So vous in blue here is the normal pronoun, the first part, and part two, your reflexive pronoun, is again vous. Nice and simple to remember, vous, vous. Il and elle, both meaning they, have the same reflexive pronoun. So in blue we can see the normal pronoun, il, elle, both of them mean they. And then in red we've got the reflexive pronoun. You use se, se, and S apostrophe if the verb begins with a vowel. So, by now on your homework sheet, you should have 2 parts filled in. Part 1, which is your normal pronoun, and then part 2, which is your reflexive pronoun. So, on to part 3. Se fâcher, on the board that you can see there, is a reflexive verb. We can tell it's a reflexive verb because it's got the reflexive pronoun in front of it. As you can see, it's in the ER form. It's got ER at the end, which means it's a verb, like that tree trunk we were talking about earlier. And the branches that come off of it are the I part, you part, he, she, we, you, and they parts. Se fâcher means to get angry. So we're going to be using this verb to show you part 3 of how to form a reflexive verb. It's an ER verb, so we need to conjugate it. That means break it down using the regular ER verb endings. If you can't remember how to do this, you're about to see them in a moment. If you want to say I get angry, we need part 1, which is je. Then we've got part 2, which is the reflexive pronoun. And the third part is fâche, je me fâche. Now the third part is the ER verb broken down. All we've done is taken off the ER at the end and replaced it with an E. To say you get angry, you have part 1 in blue, which is the pronoun, part 2 in red, which is the reflexive pronoun, and then part 3 we've taken off the ER from fâcher, which is the verb, and put ES on the end. If you want to say he or she gets angry, we've got il for he and elle for she. That's our pronoun in blue. Part 2 is se, it's se for both il and elle. And then what we've done here with part 3, which is your verb ending, we've taken off the ER and put an E. As we said before, for we, which is nous, the reflexive pronoun is the exact same as the pronoun. So it's nous, and fâcher, the verb ending, we take off that ER from the infinitive and we put ONS on the end. For you, if you're talking to a group of people or someone in a formal setting, we use vous. Same as with nous, meaning we have the same pronoun and reflexive pronoun. So with we, it was nous, and with you, it's vous. For the verb ending, part 3, we've taken off the ER from fâcher and put an EZ. We don't actually pronounce this Z, so it's pronounced the exact same as the infinitive, fâcher. Vous fâchez. For saying they, we've got il for a group of boys or mixed boys and girls. We've got elle for a group of girls only. That's your pronoun, part 1. The reflexive pronoun for both of those pronouns is the same, se, se. And then for the verb ending, part 3, we take off the ER and replace it with an ENT. Now this is not pronounced fâchon, okay, it's just pronounced fâche. We don't pronounce that ENT on the end, but it has to be there to tell us that we're talking about a group of people, they. Okay, so by now you should have all 3 of your columns on your homework sheet filled in. The blue part is our pronouns, the red part is part 2, that is your reflexive pronoun. And our third part is the verb with the correct ending. Okay, so with the infinitive in the full verb, as that tree trunk we talked about earlier, it would end in ER. However, we've got to take that off and replace it with the correct endings. So it would be fâche with an E on the end, fâche with an ES on the end, and fâche with an E on the end again. Notice that they're all pronounced the same, but some of them are spelt differently. Again, fâche for il and elle, it's the same ending. Fâchon for nous, fâché for vous, and fâche, ENT. We don't pronounce that ENT though, for il, elle. Okay? So I get angry, you get angry, he gets angry, she gets angry, we get angry, you lot, a group of people get angry, and they get angry. The reason why I've underlined these verb endings is because they can be used with any other ER verbs. So if a verb ends in ER as that main tree trunk, the infinitive, then you can take off that ER and replace it with these endings. So, focusing on this side of the board just for a moment, s'amuser is a reflexive verb. We know because we've got this reflexive pronoun. So here we are, this is the verb s'amuser, broken down. So all I've done is taken that verb, the tree trunk, and broken it down into the different branches by taking the ER off the end and replacing it with the right endings. Be careful though, you can't mix up the endings. So you couldn't use the ending for tu, which is es, with vous, for example. Vous needs to be ending in ez. ONS couldn't be the ending for je. Okay, it needs to be an e. The only other thing that I've done is taken the me, te, se, down from M-E-T-E-S-E to M apostrophe, T apostrophe, S apostrophe. The reason I've done that is because the verb begins with a vowel. Okay, so hopefully now you've got an understanding of how reflexive verbs work. These are the other reflexive verbs that end in ER that we're going to look at to do with family and friendship relationships. So we've got them ending in ER. Se fâcher means to get angry. S'amuser means to have fun. Se chamailler means to squabble. And se disputer means to argue. The only other two that we've got that we're going to be looking at is se dire, which means to confide in someone, to tell secrets, etc. And s'entendre, which means to get on with. Okay, so that's it guys. You should now have your homework sheet completed. Make sure you go onto wordreference.com if you need help filling in that family vocab. Make sure you bring your sheet with you next lesson and write any issues or problems that you might have had on your sheet, and we can go over those next lesson too.